Most people know something about World War II. Most people immediately associate World War II with Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party. Many people after the war, and especially nowadays, think that Hitler and the Nazis are just a one-time deal. We're just a one-time deal. That Hitler and Nazi ideals would never ever come to prominence ever again. Unfortunately for those people, that oft quoted assumption is completely wrong. Hitler and the Nazi Party are just one example of a nationalist, socialist, totalitarian state. Other examples of these states are China, Iran, the USSR, and North Korea. They all share some common characteristics, including complete control of their subjects through fear, force, intimidation, and through imposing various standards of ethnic, cultural, and political purity through cleansing or purging their people occasionally. The Nazi edition of this purge was called the Holocaust. The Holocaust was officially run by the Gestapo, and the Gestapo is not only important today because of how important the Gestapo was to the Nazis, but also because through the Gestapo, a model was created for most, if not all, totalitarian states to retain power to not only yesterday, but also today and tomorrow. The Gestapo was established on the 26th of April, 1933, under Hermann Goering in Prussia. It is interesting to note that the Gestapo was not a big organization when it first started, only comprising about 250 people. That's not that big. But the Gestapo would soon get bigger when Heinrich Himmler, future SS director and at the time director of secret police in Bavaria, was chosen as deputy director of the Gestapo in 1934. This effectively unified all the secret state polices in all the states in Germany. The Gestapo would again be reshuffled. This time, it would last the entirety of World War II. The Gestapo were consolidated into the new RSHA, or the Reich Security Main Office, together with the SD, which were the intelligence gathering service of the Nazis, and the Kripo, who caught common criminals like thieves and burglars. From this composition, you can probably tell what the RSHA was about, but just in case, the RSHA was the final Nazi consolidation of the extra legal and secret police and the intelligence gathering services. The RSHA itself was organized into 6 subsections. AMT, meaning subsection 4, was the Gestapo, and this was headed by Heinrich Müller, who would come to be the final head of the Gestapo. The SD and the Gestapo had an especially special relationship. The SD would gather information on enemies of the Nazi regime, while the Gestapo would act on this information, track down and capture these enemies, and usually send them to concentration camps or death camps after a few rounds of torture. This usually led to these reported enemies' painful deaths. The Gestapo itself was organized into 5 subsections, ranging from political enemies to religious organizations to security. It is also interesting to note that the Gestapo never exceeded 50,000 members during the course of World War II, and the lowest estimate for the Gestapo's membership numbers were 32,000 people. The SS and the Gestapo worked very closely together and are often mistaken as one and the same by many people. The Gestapo is also part of the SS, and the specific part of the SS that the Gestapo was branched into was the Allgemeine or General SS. This division had the mission of enforcing Nazi racial policy. To provide a quick background, the other 2 units of the SS were the Waffen SS, the most elite troops of the Nazi Wehrmacht or army, and the SS Totenkopfverbände, which means death's head units, who administer the concentration camps. The SS and the Gestapo were both headed by Himmler at points, and both worked very closely together. In fact, they even had the same goal, but the Gestapo and the SS were both fundamentally different organizations, and both had very different roles in enforcing that same goal. The Gestapo and the SS' two distinct goals were to suppress all resistance to Nazi rule, and also to exterminate all the Jews in Europe. In a sense, the Gestapo were the brains of the operation, while the SS was the muscle. The Gestapo had three main categories of techniques that they used, but these techniques all had one goal: to get and exploit information by any and all means necessary. These three types of techniques are violent techniques, non-violent techniques, and direct extermination. Violent techniques are comprised of things like torture, interrogation, and murder, while non-violent techniques are things like intelligence, espionage, and denunciations. Direct extermination techniques were the concentration camps and the Einsatzgruppen. The direct extermination techniques are named as such because they were the only way for the Gestapo to kill enemies to the Nazis quickly and without much hassle. Concentration and extermination camps were used heavily by the Gestapo. These camps consisted of squalid living quarters for prisoners, where they were either gassed to death or eliminated by euthanasia, or just simply working them to death. The Einsatzgruppen were mobile killing squads that went in as part of Hitler's invasion of Russia. Through all these means, the Gestapo, whether killing these enemies or just silencing them, was the principal means of eliminating enemies of the party. The Gestapo committed many crimes during their decade-long reign of terror. The Gestapo made up border incidents with the SD to provide a pretext for the Nazi invasion into Poland. This ruse was carried out on the 31st of August, 1939, to great success as the Nazis invaded Poland. Obviously, this whole incident started World War II. The Gestapo, when in World War II, also did things like executing civilians in occupied territories. And a good example is when the Gestapo killed the entire Czech town of Lidice just because false information linked that town to Reinhard Heydrich's murder. Reinhard Heydrich, by the way, was one of the most important and most brutal Nazi officials that would ever walk the earth. He was the director of the SD and the second director of the Gestapo. They also killed prisoners of war, whether recaptured or just any prisoners of war. They tried to kill them all. The Gestapo seized private and public property. They also processed and sent people to concentration and death camps. And they punished people for deeds committed by their relatives, not unlike the North Korean justice system of today. But the Gestapo's greatest horrors were the persecution of Jews and Christians and also other religions that did not fall into any of these categories, like the Freemasons and the Jehovah's Witnesses. The Gestapo killed 11 million people. This may not seem like a lot, especially when you consider the total death toll of World War II, which has been estimated to be at about 75 million people. But in fact, that 11 million deaths make up around 15% of the total casualties of World War II. Out of that 11 million people, 6 million Jews were exterminated. Two-thirds of the entire Jewish population of Europe, which is extremely scary to think about. Of that number, a third were killed by the Einsatzgruppen, who had a horrifyingly high killing rate as Operation Barbarossa only lasted 6 months. After World War II, and especially after the dissolution of the USSR after the Cold War, many falsely believed and hoped even that organizations like the Gestapo would never rise again. But that was not the case, because totalitarian and oppressive governments with their own Gestapo are on the rise today everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, I mean every country in the world, no matter how safe or democratic they may seem. Examples of overt Gestapo-like organizations today are the Revolutionary Guard of Iran, the Public Security Bureau of China, and the Ministry of State Security in North Korea. While it may be too easy to focus, and many do focus on these countries as the real threats to our rights and freedoms, the bigger problems that we are facing are the Gestapos of the West, who are suppressing our rights by using fear, intimidation, and the state to persecute, marginalize, and destroy anyone who steps out of the line, who steps out of line, no matter whether they may be a 16-year-old kid or an elderly woman just walking along the street. These Gestapos are characterized by Antifa and colleges who shut down and suppress conservative speakers from speaking at their colleges. All wars are fought on the basis of ideas. This includes the two world wars that we have fought in the 20th century. We are in an ideological World War III. Now, this may not seem be the case in actuality, because there is no armed conflict between nations that encompasses the entire world. But ideas are the most important aspects of wars. And examples of ideas fighting for supremacy are the Greco-Persian Wars, where the Greeks and the Persians fought over which culture was to be supreme, or the Napoleonic Wars, where the French culture wanted to reign supreme, or even such conflicts as the American Civil War, where the North and the South fought each other based on different interpretations of the Constitution and different interpretations of human rights. This World War III is being fought between not just American, but Western, Judeo-Christian, and Enlightenment ideals represented by America, and oppressive, radical, atheist, and communist supporting forces who only seek to destroy and suppress every dissenting opinion, represented by such states as China and North Korea. This war is being fought over the hearts and minds of everyone, much like how the Bible says that Satan wants to capture our hearts and minds, not just our bodies. We have to win this war, but are we even winning?